Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the endocrine system in humans. So, the main function of the endocrine system is that it helps control your mood, growth, development, a bunch of organ function, metabolism of different things, and reproduction. And it consists of glands that secrete hormones, which have different functions in your body. And we'll go through like each gland and the hormones that it secretes. So the gist of it is that hormones are carried to the organ, skin, muscles, tissues through the blood. That's why it's called endocrine, because it's inside of your body. Like an exocrine gland would be like a sweat gland. The endocrine system is like it's constantly monitoring your hormone levels. And when they rise, the protection stops. And when they drop, the protection starts. And this is just to maintain homeostasis. It's like that balance your body needs to be in to function properly. So the pituitary gland is a pea-sized gland that's located like right about here in your brain. And it's like at the neck of the hypothalamus. So if you see like the hypothalamus kind of like thins out, and at the base of that is the pituitary gland. And it has two main parts: the anterior pituitary gland, which is attached by blood vessels, and the posterior pituitary gland, which is a part of your brain. And it is in charge of producing hormones that control the function of other glands. So it's kind of like the master gland. And it also controls physical functions of your body, such as blood pressure and reproduction. And it senses the level of hormones. So when they rise, it tells other glands to stop producing those hormones, but when they drop, it tells the glands to produce more. So the pituitary gland is kind of like where everything starts. So your anterior pituitary gland produces adrenocorticotropic hormone, which stimulates your adrenal glands to release steroid hormones. Your anterior pituitary gland also secretes growth hormone, which controls growth, metabolism, your body composition, all of that good stuff. It secretes gonadotropins, which stimulate sex hormones, their production in the ovaries and testes, depending on if you're male or female. It also has prolactin, which stimulates milk production, and thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, which stimulates your thyroid to secrete hormones. So we'll go over like each of those glands, but this is basically like where everything starts. So like, do you see how it's all like stimulating or releasing? Like that's because like, for example, like we'll get to um like thyroid stimulating hormone in the anterior pituitary gland. It will stimulate your thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. So it's like a hormone that has to like send a signal to a gland to secrete that hormone, if that makes sense. And then in your posterior pituitary gland, which is in your hypothalamus, you have the antidiuretic hormone, which controls your water balance and blood pressure, and oxytocin, which stimulates uterine contractions and milk secretion in females. Yeah. And then your intermediate pituitary gland, which is like kind of in between, has melanocyte stimulating hormone, which stimulates melanin production, which is just like that skin pigment. So here in this diagram, so this is like the hypothalamus, and then it like tapers off into your posterior pituitary and then your anterior pituitary gland. And then in the middle, this is like your intermediate pituitary gland. So that's like it's really small, but all of these hormones are secreted, and it's like the master gland. So your thyroid is a butter-shaped gland, butterfly-shaped gland that's in the front of your neck, like it's like near the bottom of your neck, like it's in your neck, as you can see in this picture. And it plays a big role in metabolism, growth, development, and your body temperature. So the hormones secreted are thyroxine, which is T4, and it maintains the hormone secreted, and it's inactive usually, and is converted to T3 by the liver and kidneys, which is important for digestion, your heart and muscle function, brain development, and bone maintenance. And then triiodothyronine, T3, it's active from the thyroid hormone, and it has pretty much the same role as T4. And calcitonin is produced by C cells in the thyroid, and this regulates your calcium and phosphate levels in the blood. And all this is like important for bone maintenance, as mentioned here. And T3 and T4 are basically known as the thyroid hormones. So if you remember, like I mentioned, like the anterior pituitary gland stimulates thyroid secreting hormones. So that sends a signal to your thyroid, which basically secretes T3 and T4, which are your thyroid hormones, and then they go out and do their job. So your parathyroid thyroid is just like four small glands located on the back of the thyroid gland. So like as you can see here, they're just really small and they're like on your thyroid. And they regulate calcium levels in the blood, bones, and body. And they secrete parathyroid hormone, which is PTH, and it goes into your bones, takes some calcium out, and then puts it into the blood. So it's like regulating your calcium. So your adrenal gland is located in your posterior body wall, superior to the kidney. So like as you can see here, it's like on top of your kidney. And it has layers. So the adrenal medulla is stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system. And this secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine, which is responsible for your fight and flight response. So like when you think of adrenaline, like that's kind of what it is. And then you have your adrenal cortex, which is stimulated by your anterior pituitary gland. So like I told you, like everything, like most of your glands get their like signal from the anterior pituitary gland. And the layers in your adrenal cortex, you have your zona glomerulosa, which is your outermost layer, and it secretes mineral corticoids, which are aldosterone, and aldosterone regulates your sodium retention and potassium secretion, and it controls the mineral and water balance in your body. And basically that's how your kidney maintains like your fluid balance. So like you don't have too much water in your blood. You want the right balance. And then you have your zona fasciculata, which is like that middle layer of your adrenal cortex, and it secretes glucosteroids. And these include cortisol and corticosterone, which regulate your blood glucose levels and stimulate the metabolism of proteins and lipids to be converted into sugars so that you can increase your glucose levels. So like if there's too little glucose in your blood, the glucosteroids will start secreting to increase your levels of glucose. And then the innermost layer of your adrenal cortex is the zona reticularis, which secretes gonatocorticoids, which are transferred to your gonads for further processing, which are your ovaries and testes. And they secrete androgens, which get converted to testosterone and estrogen. So that's where like they get transferred. So basically the pathway for the adrenal cortex is your hypothalamus secretes corticotropin releasing hormone. And then that goes to the anterior pituitary gland and it signals adrenocorticotropic hormone to be secreted. And then that hormone sends a signal to your adrenal cortex, which then secretes corticosteroids. And then depending on what you need, it will secrete the mineral corticoids, glucocorticoids, or androgens based on the layers and what is needed in your body at that moment. So your pineal gland is located in the deep brain on your midline. And it's part of something called a neuroendocrine loop, which basically goes from your retina, so it takes in light, and it goes to your optic nerve, and then to the suprachiasmatic nucleus of your hypothalamus, and then goes to the axons go to the brainstem, to the spinal cord, through your like intermediolateral column, which we went over in the nervous system, and then it goes to your superior cervical ganglion, which is like your sympathetic outflow for your head and neck. And then it stimulates the pineal gland to secrete melatonin. So basically all you need to know is like your nervous system sends a signal through the brainstem basically to stimulate your pineal gland, and that secretes melatonin. And as you can see here, your pineal gland is like really, really small, and it's located kind of here in the middle of your brain. So melatonin coordinates your body to control your circadian rhythms, which is how your body knows whether it's like day or night and seasonal change. Like without it, you like jet lag is when like your circadian rhythms are off. Like you've been in a country for a really long time, and then when it's night there and it's day wherever you are, your body just like needs to adapt. Like your circadian rhythms need to go back in to normal. And melatonin has an influence on the secretion of gonadotropin, which is like also seasonal change, or how your body knows like how the seasons are changing. So your pancreas is both an exo and an endocrine gland, and it is regulated by levels of blood glucose. So you have pancreatic islets, which are also called islets of Langerhans. And in here are 4 types of cells, which each have their own unique hormones. So you have 4 hormones associated with the pancreas. So your alpha cells secrete glucagon, which increase blood glucose when it's low. Your beta cells secrete insulin, which decrease your blood glucose when it's high. So like if there's too much blood glucose, your pancreas will, beta cells will go start working to secrete insulin. You have delta cells, which secrete somatostatin, which inhibit the secretion of glucagon and insulin, and it reduces the absorbance of nutrients in your gut. And you have F cells, which secrete pancreatic polypeptide, which inhibits the secretion of somatostatin and your digestive enzymes. So that's all in your pancreas, and your pancreas is located like right here. It's like behind your stomach, kind of nestled into like the duodenum, your first part of like your small intestine, as you can see here. So your ovaries, their pathway, like how they like kind of get triggered is your hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormone, which goes to your anterior pituitary to stimulate luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone, which is also FSH. And then it sends that to your ovary, which goes and produces estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, and inhibin. So now I'll like go over the hormones. So luteinizing hormone stimulates the formation of your corpus luteum, and for it to secrete estrogen and progesterone. Follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, stimulates the primary follicle development, and for them to secrete estrogen. So estrogen has been mentioned a lot. Estrogen is your female secondary sex characteristics, and it supports the reproductive cycle. Progesterone maintains your uterus during pregnancy, and relaxin really like gets secreted during birth. It allows your pelvis to open up and relaxes your pubic symphysis and dilates your cervix so that like the baby may be delivered. And inhibin releases the inhibits the release, so like kind of blocks the release of FSH. So your testes are the male gonads, and their pathway is it goes from the hypothalamus for gonadotropin releasing hormone to your anterior pituitary gland, which is secretes luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone. So this has been similar to females, but then instead of going to the ovaries, it goes to the testes to secrete testosterone and inhibin. So luteinizing hormone in a male stimulates the interstitial cells to secrete testosterone. Follicle stimulating hormone maintains spermatogenesis, and testosterone has a male secondary sex characteristics and promotes sperm production, and inhibits the release of FSH. So like they're the same, pretty much the same hormones, but they have different roles. So your mammary glands, so the location of it is that like it is the breast, and they're found in both females and males, but they serve different purposes in both. And their primary function is to produce milk, and this is only produced after childbirth. And although like they're present in both male and female, like it doesn't really do anything in males. It's really only functional in females. So the hormones secreted by the mammary glands is like there are many different hormones. So the hypothalamus secretes prolactin releasing and prolactin inhibiting hormone. And then this like stimulates prolactin, which stimulates milk production. And then estrogen like develops and maintains the mammary gland. And then like prolactin like produces the milk, but oxytocin actually like lets it down. So the pathway is gonadotropin releasing hormone, stimulates FSH, which then goes to your ovary to produce estrogen, and then to your breast for development and maintenance. And then prolactin releasing hormone stimulates prolactin. So during pregnancy, this promotes your breast development to prepare for milk production and post-milk birth maintenance. And then prolactin inhibiting is basically dopamine, and this blocks the release of prolactin. And your posterior and pituitary gland secretes oxytocin, and this causes milk to be pushed into the lactiferous ducts and milk to be released. So other endocrine tissues that exist are not really regulated by the anterior or posterior pituitary gland, but rather by circulating levels of nutrients, minerals, oxygen, and blood pressure, other stuff that's just like not the anterior or posterior pituitary gland. And sometimes they like feedback or influence the hypothalamus or pituitary or other glands. So kind of like a loop, but they aren't originally regulated by them. So the GIT, gastrointestinal tract, has hormones. And some of them are gastrin, which stimulates gastric secretions, glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide, which stimulates insulin release, although it's like not the main insulin releaser, but like it still does that. Secretin, which stimulates your exocrine, pancreas, and bile secretion from the liver, and cholecytokinin, I don't know if I pronounced that right, stimulates the exocrine, pancreas, and gallbladder, so it makes you feel full. You also have your placenta, which is secretes human chorionic gonadotropin, and this maintains the corpus luteum, and it secretes estrogen and progesterone to maintain your pregnancy. Your kidneys monitor your blood pressure, and they secrete renin, which is important for vasoconstriction, and it stimulates secretion of aldosterone in your adrenal cortex and increases your salt and blood pressure levels. Okay, sorry, the formatting on that is not as well. And then your kidneys also secrete erythropoietin, which is EPO, and this is important because this hormone really like increases your red blood cell production. So if you, for some reason, are lacking in red blood cells, erythropoietin will be stimulated, and you'll begin creating red blood cells. And then calcitriol is also secreted from your kidneys. And this is the active form of vitamin D, and it increases absorption of calcium and phosphorus. Your heart also secretes a hormone called atrial natriuretic factor, and this decreases your blood pressure as opposed to the kidneys renin, which increases your blood pressure. And then adipose tissue, which is like fat, secretes leptin, which suppresses your appetite, and adipokines, which are responsible for your inflammatory response. So that is all we have for the endocrine system. I hope you enjoyed everything. We really went into detail about which hormones were secreted from which glands and kind of what they did, but obviously there's a lot more out there. And basically, like the basics are like the anterior pituitary or posterior pituitary gland stimulated by your hypothalamus, and then they send their hormones all over your body to start doing other functions. So that's kind of the gist of the endocrine system, and I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you.